We have new details on the Afghan terror suspect accused of shooting 2 National Guardsmen near the White House, what we are learning and how it could impact U.S. asylum policy moving forward. Good morning. I'm Dana Perino. Bill is off today. Good morning, Aisha.
Good morning to you and welcome back to you, Dana.
Thank you.
I'm Aisha Hasni in for Bill. This is America's Newsroom. That suspect is accused of shooting specialist Sarah Beckstrom and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. Beckstrom died from her injuries last week. Wolf remains in critical condition and is said to be fighting for his life.
The suspect fought in the Afghan army and he came here legally in 2021. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem on what happened next.
We know that this individual came into the country under Operation Allies Welcome and during the Biden administration. We believe he was radicalized since he's been here in this country. We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members, talk to them.
All of this is now prompting President Trump to announce what he calls a permanent pause on migration from, quote, third world countries. He is also vowing to deport some immigrants who are already here. The president defending the plan as a necessity.
How long does your administration plan to pause asylum into the U.S.?
I think a long time.
Can you give any
We
kind
don't
of
want
time?
them.
What's
We
a
don't
long
want those
time?
people. We have enough problems. We don't want those people.
Is there a list of...
Well, I guess we gave you 19, right? And it's probably more than that. They're very crime-ridden countries. They're countries that don't do a good job. They're countries that don't register from the standpoint of success. And we, frankly, don't need their people coming into our country telling us what to do.
Madeline Rivera has much more from Washington. Good morning, Maddie.
Good morning, Dana. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says they want everyone with information to come forward as they try to figure out what may have turned the suspect, an Afghan national who once worked with the CIA. 29-year-old Ramanullah Lakhanwal has not been charged with terrorism. He is, though, facing first-degree murder for the death of 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom. As investigators dig into his background, new reporting indicates he may have been struggling to adjust to life here in the U.S. The AP says Lakhanwal had been having problems holding a steady job and would sometimes spend weeks in isolation. He had been vetted by the intelligence community for his work at the CIA, and he would have been screened before getting asylum earlier this year, but the Trump administration maintains there were flaws in the system.
This guy drove across the country, as we all know, from Washington state to execute our National Guard members. That should not be happening in the United States of America.
Communities in West Virginia have been holding vigils for 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom, who passed away on Thanksgiving. 24-year-old Andrew Wolf remains in the hospital, where he's surrounded by family members. His parents say their son is a fighter, and they're asking for prayers. West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey says he met with Wolf's family at the hospital.
Certainly are here, but the positive energy, the spirit that the families bring to bear, that his friends have, everyone is rooting for him so hard to make it to that next level, and it's really encouraging to see.
President Trump says he wants to meet with Beckstrom's parents at the White House. He has extended an invite. No word yet, though, on whether they have accepted. Dana and Aisha.
All right, Maddie, thank you so much. Aisha?
Meanwhile, a different Afghan national who was paroled into the U.S. under the Biden administration was arrested last week for allegedly plotting a terror attack in Texas. That arrest taking place just one day before the shooting of those 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. Our Brooke Taylor is in Dallas now with all the details about this case. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Aisha. Well, short sources tell me that the Afghan national here posted a really credible threat, they say, on TikTok, indicating that he was going to build a bomb and blow up a building in the Fort Worth area. Mohammed Al-Akozi was arrested on Tuesday, so this was just 24 hours before the murderous attack on 2 National Guard members in D.C. He is behind bars right now, charged with making a terroristic threat. Now, Fox was the first to break this over the weekend. He came into the United States under Operations Allies Welcome, just like the D.C. shooting suspect, according to DHS. Now, Al-Akozi was admitted to the U.S. as a lawful permanent resident in September of 2022. Operation Allies Welcome was launched in 2021 by the Biden administration and resettled over 190,000 Afghans into the U.S. after its withdrawal from Afghanistan. The program has faced scrutiny over its vetting processes The Air Force pilot who flew the last evacuation flight out of Afghanistan spoke on Fox and Friends this morning.
We saw during the evacuation, we brought out 124,000 people in that evacuation in just 17 days. And so it's very difficult for those of us who are there to really imagine that there could have been any proper vetting back then at all. And to see that it is continuing right now, 4 years later, is really frustrating.
What kind of vetting did you see when you were on the ground there?
None.
And the Trump administration has directed U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to pause all asylum decisions in response to the D.C. attack. This follows the president's promise of a sharp crackdown on immigration from third world countries.
The people from different countries that are not friendly to us and countries that are out of control themselves. Countries like Somalia that have virtually no government, no military, no police. All they do is go around killing each other. Then they come into our country and tell us how to run our country. We don't want them.
And right here back in Texas, ICE has launched a detainer on the Afghan national who is charged with making a terroristic threat. Aisha.
Okay, Brooke Taylor live for us in Dallas. Brooke, thank you. Dana?
And Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin is here with us. Thanks, Tricia, for being with us today. I want to put up a list of these countries. There are 19 of them, all third world countries. Is this list static, or could it possibly grow?
No, this could absolutely grow, Dana. This is evolving, especially as we do some real analysis on this. But I do think it's incredibly important for viewers to know what the prior administration was doing when it comes to vetting, especially when it came to this Operation Allies Welcome. This vetting was paper thin. They weren't doing biometric vetting. They weren't really doing criminal vetting, criminal screening, cyber screening, financial crimes. They weren't cross-referencing. They weren't looking at social media. So President Trump and Secretary Noem have completely overhauled this process to make sure we're diving in deep and seeing who are the people who are actually entering this country. As your past guests have said, almost 200,000 Afghan nationals entering this country, many of which were military-age men. The fact of the matter is the Biden administration didn't know who was coming into our country, causing a huge national security crisis. And that's exactly what we saw the other day with this terrorist attack and then this near terrorist attack out of Fort Worth, Texas, where this individual was threatening to blow up a building. Both of these individuals being Afghan nationals, both of them coming in under this Biden administration program.
Can I ask you a little bit more about that tracking? Because as you're saying, the Biden administration had their process or not a process. Okay, and so one of the concerns is, as Secretary Noem said this weekend, is that the murderer here, a suspected murderer, he was radicalized while he was here. So even if he had gone through that vetting, perhaps he would get radicalized. What can DHS or the administration do working with FBI to see if there are other possible radicalizations underway?
Well, when I mentioned the cross-referencing with other agencies, there was a lot of siloing of intelligence between agencies. But the other piece of the vetting process that the Biden administration so direly missed is the fact that they were not having these asylum applicants come in for a yearly check-in, for a yearly interview. Had that been the case, this individual might have been, there might have been flags signed, and we might have known that this individual had been radicalized. He didn't just wake up one day and lose his mind. This was over time, a process, and there were other individuals who were in his community who knew that this action would be taking place.
And we start with a Fox News alert. Right now, a National Guardsman is fighting for his life in critical condition this morning after allegedly being shot by an Afghan national on Thanksgiving Eve.
So it comes as officials revealed that the suspect was likely radicalized while living in the United States.
And we knew about him going off the rails as early as 2023. Madeline Rivera joins us live in Washington with the latest. Maddie.
Hi, good morning. 24-year-old Andrew Wolf remains in the hospital today where he is surrounded by family members. His parents say their son is a fighter and they're asking for prayers.
I had a chance to be at the hospital yesterday, and I want to tell you something. When you go there, sometimes when you go to a hospital, a lot of people are very concerned. People certainly are here. But the positive energy, the spirit that the families bring to bear, that his friends have, everyone is rooting for him so hard to make it to that next level. And it's really encouraging to see.
Communities in West Virginia have been holding vigils for 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom, who passed away on Thanksgiving. President Trump says he wants to meet with Beckstrom's parents.
I said, when you're ready, because that's a tough thing, come to the White House. We're going to honor Sarah. And likewise with Andrew, recover or not, we're going to honor her.
Investigators have been working around the clock going through the background of the suspect, 29-year-old Ramanullah Lakhanwal. They've yet to say what drove Lakhanwal, an Afghan national who once worked with the CIA, to allegedly travel cross-country to carry out this attack.
We believe he was radicalized since he's been here in this country. We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him. Anyone who has information on this needs to know that we will be coming after you, and we will bring you to justice.
Another Afghan national is facing state terror charges in Texas after DHS says he plotted to make a bomb with the intention of targeting the Fort Worth area. He was arrested on Tuesday, the day before the shooting in D.C. Lawrence, Ainsley, and Brian.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Maddie. So we're learning more and more about this guy, including that there were signs. If he ever belonged here is one thing. You know, he worked for the CIA, that zero unit. I understand that. But because the CIA said he was all right to work with and fight with, doesn't mean he's okay to live here. But let's just say they thought he was okay to live here because he worked with that unit. Well, by 2023, they say it became pretty clear that he was off the rails. He was depressed. He had no job. In fact, friends said, or acquaintances said, they thought he was going to kill himself. Then they said he has 5 kids. They said when his wife would go and visit relatives, they said the kids would come to school with dirty clothes, then they'd be dirty clothes, unwashed, and hungry. And they reported this to the school and to Health and Human Services, their local unit there. But there's no sense of anyone trying to close the circle to try to take action. But they would realize this guy was off the rails back then.
Well, so to your initial point about us working with him in the CIA, I mean, this is very common. They're not sometimes the most model citizens that we work with, but we have a common enemy. And so we typically work with people that are in the inside. But to the point of when he came back home, okay, so they noticed that he's going crazy, and they realized that he's not showing up to his check-ins, which are required for him to be here. Why didn't anyone do anything? The whole point of a check-in is to keep tabs on the person. What is the process when the person doesn't do
He ends up
the
getting
check-in?
asylum.
Exactly.
Even though he's off the rails, he gets asylum. What the hell happened?
Kristi Noem said his vetting process all happened under Joe Biden. She described the screening of Afghans and other foreign nationals under Biden as inadequate. Now Trump has strengthened the vetting process for anyone coming over or coming into our country that's an immigrant, including reviewing social media and checking to see who they interact with, because Kristi Noem says this guy was radicalized when he got here to America, but he had connections to his home community, and they're talking with family members to find out who he was interacting with. Trump also said he's going to impose additional restrictions on migrants. He's going to stop all immigrants from third world countries, and he doubled down on that. No asylum for some nations for a long time, he says, possibly. Right. Brian interviewed C.J. Douglas, Marine veteran, helped with the Afghanistan rescues.
Yeah, so he was called out of retirement to help out in Doha and screen these people. And then they said, would you co-author the What Went Wrong in Kabul and Abbey Gate? So he did that, tried to brief Joe Biden on it. First he said, can't do a half hour. He goes, well, we'll knock it out in 15 minutes. Then Joe Biden said, no, I can't even do 15 minutes. Just leave it for me. So there's no indications that Joe Biden even read it. But meanwhile, he knew about the vetting. He was trying to do it in real time on a tarmac in Qatar. Here's what he said about Afghanistan and the exit.
This still goes back to the Biden administration's failure to hold the Taliban to the conditions-based withdrawal, because as I've told you previously, I would rather fight them over there than have them here on our shores and have, American citizens have to be concerned about everyday life. I'm for the freezing, and what I would say is with that, what we need to do is look at how we are going to assist the current population we have, and then as well, how we're going to tighten up the screening process for future people coming from third world countries that don't have the ability to screen people as they're coming.
Quickly on the radicalization, since they're saying that it happened home, and I'm learning this from a lot of my veteran friends who have contacts within people that served. They served in Afghanistan, and they know some of the people that have since come to the United States that were on that plane, on the multiple planes. And they say that a lot of them are upset about how they're being treated here in America, and they thought there were going to be more resources. But as my veteran friends have made it very clear to them, how do you think American vets are treated when they come back home? We still have people that are in the middle of the street that are not getting services and all that. So there's a vetting component of this, and then people that are upset that they thought that they helped the United States when they were overseas, and they feel like they're not treated fairly. Our own veterans aren't treated fairly when they come back home. Many of them are on the streets and depressed and struggling with suicide as well.
They don't understand our society.
No,
period.
they don't.
They don't understand that your success is generated from yourself.
Right.
And they don't understand our society at all. And there's got to be immediate action taken, because evidently they were handed 1.5 million people on this immigration asylum list for the Bidens go, yeah, we haven't even looked at this list yet. So they're here, 1.5 million, and we have not been able to screen a year in, not even a year into this administration.
And with that, we bring in West Virginia's Governor Patrick Morrisey, who met with Sergeant Wolf's family at the hospital this weekend. Governor Morrisey, thank you for being here, and sincere condolences to everyone involved here, to these families.
Well, thank you, Martha.
Absolutely. It's good to have you with us. You know, give us a little sense of your visit at the hospital over the weekend. I heard you speak about it a little bit earlier this morning.
Absolutely. So first, obviously what the families have been going through and what the guardsmen, the folks in the unit have been going through has been absolutely horrendous. And yet there's so much positive energy and spirit that flows with everyone who's been at the hospital, because they know that they're taking the parents' wishes to heart. There's so many people that are just praying and trying to lift up Andrew to help him survive in this incredible fight. And so while we're dealing with a very, very scary situation, I can tell you that there's so much positive energy that's rubbing off on Andrew right now. And I think that the mom and the dad are encouraging more and more prayer. And so on one hand, it's very, very difficult. On the other hand, it's incredibly powerful and moving to see that miracles may be occurring. And at minimum right now, while he's still in a very serious condition, we have some positive news, and that's certainly very well received by everyone involved.
For him. You know, we heard Janine Pirro in D.C. ask everyone to pray for these families at Thanksgiving. Our family did that. I know families all across the country are praying for these individuals. Sarah Beckstrom, who has passed, and Andrew Wolf, who is hanging in there, and we all hope that there will be a miraculous recovery for him. I want to play this from Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, on Sunday on NBC. Watch.
We believe he was radicalized since he's been here in this country. We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members, talk to them. So far, we've had some participation, but anyone who has information on this needs to know that we will be coming after you, and we will bring you to justice.
So what are you learning about what happened here? This person worked at the highest levels of the CIA in Afghanistan and was brought here in gratitude, really, for that help. What went wrong here, Governor?
Listen, I know that the federal investigation is going to reveal many of those facts, but I was actually encouraged when President Trump said there needed to be a revisitation of the whole vetting system. Look, Martha, I think over a multi-year period, as millions of undocumented aliens came in, and as there were loopholes that were created through asylum and other tools to let more people stay, that there are a lot of very dangerous people that are here. And it's important to take a time out, to do a pause, to do a new vetting system, to look at all the people that have come in and say, what's going on? Do we really know about all the people that came in over the years? So I can't speak to the specific circumstances in this case, but most certainly we need to do a very thorough review. And I think President Trump's call for more vetting and a pause is absolutely the correct thing to do.
I hear what you're saying, Governor. The sheer numbers and the chaos that surrounded the exit from Afghanistan and bringing people here, the sheer numbers mean it is very difficult to vet properly, and we saw that across the border as well, and that's why we have a lot of criminals who are being removed from the country and repeat offenders in many cases. But anyway, I want to thank you for being here, and I know you're going to keep us up to date on Andrew Wolf as we continue to pray for him, and we pray for Sarah Beckstrom and her family as well. Governor Morrissey, thank you very much. Good to see you again,
thank you so much, and let's keep those prayers coming for Andrew and to lift Sarah's soul up.
Thank you. Thanks, Governor. Be well.
I would like to address the horrific tragedy that took place in our nation's capital last week. A foreign terrorist that the Biden administration failed to properly vet ambushed 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard who were honorably serving here to keep the residents and visitors of Washington, D.C. safe. U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf was severely wounded in the attack and remains hospitalized while he continues to fight for his life. Tragically, U.S. Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom died of her wounds. She was just 20 years old. President Trump and the entire White House are praying for Andrew's full recovery at the request of his parents and their personal phone call with the president over the weekend. And we are keeping Sarah's family and friends in our prayers during this unimaginably difficult time. Sarah and Andrew represent the very best of America. 2 young patriots who were willing to put on the uniform and risk their lives in defense of their fellow Americans. Both of them truly embody the profound words spoken by Jesus Christ in the gospel. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Sarah and Andrew are heroes, and we will never forget their sacrifice. That means ensuring the monster responsible for this atrocity is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and faces the most severe punishment possible. It also means reckoning with why this atrocity was allowed to happen in the first place, so that it may never occur again. Here are the facts. The terrorist who gunned down American soldiers blocks away from the White House in an ambush was an Afghan national who was flown into our country by Joe Biden's administration in September 2021 in the chaotic wake of their botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, one of the most embarrassing moments in the history of our great country. Joe Biden's historic failure in Afghanistan continues to haunt this country and our men and women in uniform. Not only did this surrender lead to a suicide bombing that killed 13 American heroes in Kabul, but now National Guard troops were shot on U.S. soil by the same kind of enemy. We continue to live with the deadly consequences of Joe Biden's horrific leadership. Nearly 100,000 Afghans were recklessly released into the United States with little to no vetting. There was no regard for the disorder and violence that this would unleash on American communities and American culture. Reportedly, thousands of these strangers and unknown individuals were flagged to the Biden administration for national security, public safety, and fraud concerns. But the terrifying truth is that the Afghanistan debacle is just a small part of Democrats' complete and total betrayal of the American people during the Biden years. The tragedy that we just witnessed the day before Thanksgiving is a reminder that untold thousands of terrorists, gang members, and criminals were invited into our country and remain here to this very day. The border is now secure, thanks to President Trump, but the threat in our interior remains real and urgent. These public safety threats are already inside our land, and President Trump was elected on a promise to find and remove them, and he has already taken significant steps and made significant progress towards fulfilling this promise. But there is more work to be done because President Trump believes that he has a sacred obligation to reverse the calamity of mass, unchecked migration into our country. As a result, the Trump administration is now actively re-examining all of the Afghans imported into the country by Joe Biden. Any individual who threatens our national security or our citizenry will be subject to removal. President Trump has already permanently paused migration of foreign nationals from third world countries that pose a very high risk to the United States. For too long, past American presidents supported self-destructive immigration policies that allowed foreigners who outright hate our country and have no interest in assimilating into our culture. They've allowed these individuals to flood peaceful American communities. This disastrous approach has drained our welfare program, driven up the cost of housing, suppressed wages, and jeopardized the safety of law-abiding American citizens. In fact, according to a new bombshell report from the New York Times, Somalian migrants in Minnesota have defrauded nearly $1 billion in taxpayer-funded benefits under Democrat Governor Walz's leadership. President Trump is putting an end to this dangerous America Last approach. His position is rooted in common sense. In the wake of last week's atrocity, it is more important than ever to finish carrying out the president's mass deportation operation. America cannot allow millions upon millions of unvetted illegal aliens to be rewarded with amnesty after they broke our nation's laws to come here. They must go back to their home countries. It is also essential to immediately address the massive fraud and corruption that has been going on for decades in other aspects of our immigration system, most notably when it comes to asylum claims. Millions of people who have come here under false pretenses are told blatant lies now enjoy temporary legal status. President Trump is ending this scam as well, and I would point out that the Democrats have tried to block this administration from doing so at every turn with lawsuit after lawsuit. The hard truth is that even when it comes to our legal immigration system, past presidents have failed to ensure that all prospective citizens love America, will add value and contribute to our communities, and will assimilate into our culture. Leaders have a duty to defend and advance the interests of their own people, not foreign nationals. Leaders also have a duty to preserve the integrity and character of our nation's national identity. That is why President Trump is more committed than ever to fully restoring American sovereignty by keeping our borders secure, removing all illegal alien invaders, and rebuilding a legal immigration system that makes sense and benefits our country. President Trump has no higher responsibility than to defend our homeland and our people, and he will never waver in doing so.
We are also now learning more about the Afghan national accused in that deadly attack. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem revealing new details as the investigation unfolds, including how his descent into terror could have started.
I will say we believe he was radicalized since he's been here in this country. We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members, talk to them. So far, we've had some participation, but anyone who has information on this needs to know that we will be coming after you.
The Associated Press also reporting a leading national refugee agency was warned multiple times the suspect was spiraling into mania and mental illness beginning in 2023, saying, quote, Ramanullah has not been functional as a person, father, or provider since March of last year. He quit his job that month and his behavior has changed greatly. The emails described a man who was struggling to assimilate, unable to hold a steady job or commit to his English courses while he alternated between periods of dark isolation and reckless travel. Joining us now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Alex Pelbeth. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for joining us. You have a very interesting perspective on all of this because you flew the last American plane out of Afghanistan following our withdrawal. So you served in the country and then witnessed the chaos that unfolded leading up to that last flight out. What do you make of where we are right now after the death of a National Guards member, another one fighting for their life, and renewed focus on our national security?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show again. Great to be back here. Unfortunate circumstances for sure. You know, first and foremost, just continue prayers for those families, for the families of the two National Guardsmen. What a challenging situation. So frustrating that we're still dealing with the fallout from Afghanistan today. I think we're still dealing with a result of, unfortunately, Biden's failed policy. We saw during the evacuation, we brought out 124,000 people in that evacuation in just 17 days. And so it's very difficult for those of us who are there to really imagine that there could have been any proper vetting back then at all. And to see that it is continuing right now, 4 years later, is really frustrating.
What kind of vetting did you see when you were on the ground there?
None. Okay, none. Here's what we saw. Is we're filling up our C-17s with hundreds of people. Every flight had hundreds of people on it, and yeah, I'm looking in the faces of these a lot of really young families, a lot of little kids that we brought out, and we got so efficient. I mean, great job by the United States military to be able to conduct what became the largest airlift evacuation in history, especially given the circumstances with which the Biden administration forced us to operate. But we bring all these people out, and then within 30 days, they're in the United States of America, there's almost no vetting that was actually done at the time. And what's unfortunate is that we know we brought out some good people as well, right? We brought out people who helped America, and because there was no vetting, or because the policy by the Biden administration was just so lax, this open border policy that is just so incredibly lax, even the good people we brought out are now suffering for this. Look, we've been backed into a corner. We're not doing this because we want to do it. We are doing this because we have to do it.
Well, the leading theory right now is that he was radicalized at some point in the United States, and there were warning signs, but nobody took them seriously. Potentially most egregiously is the fact that he was supposed to check in with Washington state officials, but he failed to do so repeatedly. Had those Washington state officials intervened in some way, could this have all been prevented? That's one question. But this is also leading to major questions over how somebody could have worked with the U.S. government while working with that CIA-backed military unit in Afghanistan, work with our government, and then come to the United States and turn into the terrorist, a type of terrorist that he was fighting against. So what do you think about that?
You know, I'm really not sure. I don't know his background, what he did for us in Afghanistan. I do know that we used a lot of people, not that we maybe necessarily would have chosen to use during that conflict, but people that we were forced to use. And so I think this is a little bit of an inevitability with, in 4 years of an open door immigration policy, what we're seeing, not just with the Afghans here, but we're talking about, I think, immigration policy as a whole, with 4 years of essentially no vetting, open border policy. What we're feeling even here in South Carolina, in the low country where I live, is that every state's now a border state, and President Trump is right. Immigration is now become a national security issue. And so we have no choice but to re-examine everybody who's come here, certainly everybody who's come here since during the Afghanistan withdrawal. But more importantly, I think we need to relook at our immigration policy as a whole.
Yeah, and President Trump is reviewing those Afghan asylum cases and putting a pause on applications as well. Lieutenant Colonel, we thank you so much for joining us this morning with your perspective. We appreciate your time as always.
Appreciate. Thank you so much. If I just say, look, this is I am running for Congress here in South Carolina. Hellbathforcongress.com. This is one of the reasons I am running, is to make sure President Trump has reinforcements, battle-tested leaders by his side, so that we can tackle issues just like this.
Understood. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
National Guard specialist Sarah Beckstrom's hometown, remembering fallen service member. She's the fallen service member who died on Thanksgiving Eve after she and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf were attacked in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. And Wolf is still in critical condition. His father is asking for all of us to, quote, pray for my son, with lawmakers echoing the same message.
We're grateful to them, and we're praying that they're going to be safe.
We still have hope. He's still in critical condition. We are all praying for Andrew Wolf.
They're trying to harvest as many prayers as possible from all across the country, all across the globe, to help him recover.
I believe in the power of prayer, and I can promise you his parents believe in the power of prayer.
We are a praying country, and we all have to pray for Andy's full recovery right now.
Our next guest is the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, The Miracles Among Us, How God's Grace Plays a Role in Healing. And his new Fox Nation special on the miracles among us releases Wednesday. Fox News senior medical analyst Dr. Mark Siegel joins us now. Hey, Dr. Siegel.
Great to see you.
Good morning. You wrote about something similar. Someone else was shot and saw a miracle.
The miracles happen, and the combined prayers have a role. Community intercession, which is what you just showed, where you ask for the country to pray, like we're praying for Andrew Wolf right now. And a community prayer has been released, which basically says, God, please triumph good over evil. Please complete and total healing for Andrew Wolf, Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, and protection. That comes from Psalm 91. God, protect our troops, protect our military, protect our soldiers. And you saw Janine Perot. She told me that, he was shot in the head, initially responding to some stimuli. There's a lot we can do now in that condition. So we pray that it works. He's had surgery already. We don't know where he is exactly right now, but we're hoping for a recovery.
Prayers work. They really do. And miracles can happen.
And the Pope had told Robert Redfield, John Paul II said, prayer is our most important tool that we have, our most powerful tool.
I believe it. He's a hero. His father, Jason Wolf, is a deputy sheriff in Berkeley County, and Representative Riley Moore has been talking with the family, and he lives in West Virginia, and he said he is hanging on. So everyone, please say a prayer for this young man. He's a National Guardsman that was shot, Andrew Wolf.
I had a patient in a coma for 3 months when I first started my training. Every day the family was at the bedside. His heart rate's going up. His blood pressure's going up. He's waking up. I didn't believe a word of it. After 3 months, completely woke up, walked out of the hospital, and went back to work. It changed my life as a physician. And all the physicians who are working on Andrew Wolf should have that in mind.
Well, your book is doing so well, The Miracles Among Us, and there's a special that's dropping on Fox Nation. Here's a sample of several of the figures in the book that you wrote about that were highlighted in your special. Watch this.
God performed miracles. He was on that ball field.
It was a miracle that we were able to watch that video.
So I've had 7 cardiac arrests.
In each chapter of this book, my publisher said to me, identify the most prominent miracle.
It was unbelievable. I don't understand how I did. I absolutely did.
I can't explain it, to be honest with you. I can't explain it.
They all said the same thing. I can't explain it. Dr. Siegel, how do you as a physician explain it?
The miracles in those chapters that you just showed accumulated. With Steve Scalise, the first miracle, Majority Leader Scalise, the first miracle occurs on the ball field, that he even makes it that far because Brad Wenstrup applies a tourniquet and they're giving him a lot of blood. He gets to the hospital. 2 tremendous surgeons and an interventional radiologist get involved and repair his artery that in a way no one's ever done before. Then he prays, and he talks about the community prayers, and prayers came in all over the United States for Steve Scalise. For Dr. Robert Montgomery, the chief of surgery at NYU that we just featured, he talked about coming back into his body from a great height after a cardiac arrest and how he could hear a sound, and it turned out to be his own breathing. And that description, all 7 times, was the same. And it gives you a sense of being part of a greater reality. A surgeon like him, who's a scientist, telling it exactly that way. If you read that chapter in the book, you're going to believe if you have any doubts.
All right. And is it out now, the special out now? It comes out Wednesday?
Wednesday, the special is out.
All right. His book is out, though, The Miracles Among Us. It's out now. And then the Fox Nation special will be available on Fox Nation on Wednesday. Thank you so much, Dr. Siegel.
Thanks for your help.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Emily Campagno, Jessica Tarlov, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The 5. And disturbing new questions tonight on the vetting of Afghan nationals after the horrific ambush shooting of 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. Investigators are digging deeper into the accused Afghan gunman who killed Army National Guard Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and leaving Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf clinging to life. Tonight, we're told he's showing encouraging signs of improvement. We're also learning that 5,000 Afghan applicants have been flagged for security concerns since 2021, when former President Biden took office. In response, the Trump administration is halting all Afghan visas and reevaluating entry policies. And the president is defending the freeze.
That animal should not have been allowed to come into our country.
How long does your administration plan to pause asylum into the U.S.?
I think a long time.
Can you give any
We
kind
don't
of
want
time?
them.
What's
We
a
don't
long
want those
time?
people. We have enough problems. We don't want those people.
Is there a list of...
Well, I guess we gave you 19, right? And there's probably more than that. They're very crime-ridden countries. They're countries that don't do a good job. They're countries that don't register from the standpoint of success. And we, frankly, don't need their people coming into our country telling us what to do.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the tragic shootings underscore the importance of Trump's mass deportation operation.
The Trump administration is now actively re-examining all of the Afghans imported into the country by Joe Biden. Any individual who threatens our national security or our citizenry will be subject to removal. It is more important than ever to finish carrying out the president's mass deportation operation.
But Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett seems to think that the problem isn't unvetted migrants, but something else.
Now you want to go against every single immigrant. That doesn't make sense. And it's frankly not who we are, because if that's the case, let's talk about the white supremacists and how many of them need to be kicked out of this country, because I can guarantee you I can track down more crimes that they've committed, because overall immigrants have a lower crime committal rate than white supremacists. But we don't want to talk about that in this country.
All right, Jesse, shall we kick it off with you today? Your
It's
thoughts?
just the craziest story I've ever heard. So the CIA starts these paramilitary units in Afghanistan. They're like, you know, hit squads. They kick down doors in the dead of night and just kill everybody in there. You give these guys guns, you give them cash, you give them some intel, and they do the dirty work. And they did a very good job for us. So when you leave Afghanistan, these guys probably gonna get slaughtered by the Taliban. So what you do is you fly them to Qatar. And they say they vetted them in Qatar. Now, what does that mean? How do you vet someone they pull out of a mountain in Afghanistan and hand a gun and some cash and tell him to go kill Taliban? He doesn't have social media. He doesn't have a therapist you can interview. He has no bank account. He has nothing. There's nothing to go on. You don't know if he beats his wife. You don't know if he's a sociopath. So they say, fine, let's fly you to Washington State, and we're going to put you up in a luxury apartment and all your 5 kids and your wife. So the guy gets there, and he doesn't work, and he starts smoking cannabis, and he starts becoming suicidal. And you check in on him, and he's always off driving somewhere. No one knows where he is. And there's all these red flags. And so I don't know whether the guy went crazy, he was out for revenge. You don't know. And so he goes in and he almost kills 2 of our guys. So what's the solution? The solution is you don't bring them here. Yes, they worked on our side in a nasty war. Why can't you fly them to Egypt? The guy doesn't speak any English. He'd be much more comfortable in a Muslim country. Why do you have to fly him here? Then we're responsible for him if he goes nuts, and we're collateral damage. It's not like all of a sudden we're flying CIA-backed South Vietnamese mercenaries to Chicago when we left Saigon because we felt bad. No, it's just common sense. And that's all we need to do is use a little more common sense.
Emily.
Yeah, for those having issues with how the administration is handling now, these ghastly and preventable ambush and murders, and almost 2, remember back there's a million examples of this, but in 1982, the Chicago Tylenol murders, when someone poisoned a few bottles of Tylenol, just a few. But what happened? Across the country, every single bottle of Tylenol was recalled. And then it also changed so that from now on, every cap, every bottle, everything you get in a store has a sealed container so that you know if it has been tampered with. So why now, when just as there, it was a fatal response? Why now, when we know it was because of an utter failure of a deranged lunatic that was behind this, and I sort of include President Biden in that comment too, why now are people loath to examine who's in this country? The reality is that we have up to 85,000 refugees that weren't vetted at all, or were vetted so minimally as to call it an utter failure. And that the headline seems to be, for example, by the New York Times, that President Trump blames without evidence on immigrants and now is sitting to task the process of vetting them for the first time, meaningfully. Shouldn't the headline be the utter failure of the prior president did not secure and procure American interests first and foremost as a priority, which has led to the preventable death of Sarah Beckstrom? I find it appalling, and as usual, the mainstream media is in concert with the failure of that administration that, at all respects, ignored the well-meaning advice of generals and ignored the well-being of our troops and our American citizens. And now with this president finally doing that for the first time, we are told he's being racist. Think about, too, the daunting nature of this task, the sheer volume of the vetting, and also with a non-collaborative or corroborative body like the government of Afghanistan, the majority of those identities are false, and there's no ability to corroborate or authenticate them. So we're dealing with an 85,000 strong mess. But this president and this administration says, you know what, we'll take it one by one and step by step because American interests and American safety is that much of a priority to us. It is so refreshing. But God rest Sarah Beckstrom's soul and also President Biden after this, because it lands squarely on his shoulders.
There were emails, Jessica, in 2021 that surfaced on the Biden team. They basically were trying to increase their historic airlift numbers,
right? And
the vetting went by the wayside. So then people, unfortunately, have to pay the price for that, like Sarah Beckstrom.
Yeah, it was definitely a hurried process. I did not see many Democrats even, or people part of the administration who were defending the way that we exited this situation. And a lot of the concern was actually for people like this alleged murderer who had helped over the years. And you see veterans all over TV talking about how amazing the vast majority of these people are, and that we were going to leave them to die if we did that. I think that looking at that program again and saying we can't repeat that is definitely important. But it's been disappointing to see President Trump or DHS Secretary Kristi Noem on the Sunday shows denying the fact that Donald Trump's administration granted him asylum in April of this year. So they had a chance to evaluate the situation as well when he was nuts, when he was suicidal, when he was threatening, all these things that had been going on in his life, and they also let him stay. So just making this it was your fault, not we have an American problem, I think turns a lot of people off from this, or this kind of rhetoric when Trump is posting that you need to denaturalize people who undermine domestic tranquility and deport foreign nationals who are non-compatible with Western civilization. Using those kinds of sweeping terms versus saying, we need to look at this program and we need to make sure that everyone that we are bringing here deserves to be here is a much more appropriate response to it. But, you know, I understand and was personally hugely upset by this and continue to be, and hope that, you know, the soldier who's fighting for his life can get through.
So many of these stories that we've covered over the years, Greg, have to go back to that the terrorist only has to be right once.
Yeah.
You have to be right every single time. And doesn't seem to be a way to track radicalization in a way that would prevent it.
Well, first of all, it isn't Trump's fault for not finding the needle in a haystack that was placed by somebody else. You know, it would be perfect, it'd be great, but it's not his fault. We share the same brain, Emily. It's kind of scary because I was looking back at 2016 at the Syrian refugee issue, and I remember the big story wasn't about the Syrian refugees. It was about Donald Trump Jr. talking about the bowl of Skittles. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
If you get a bowl of, it was like a meme in the early 20s, you're talking 10 years ago, a bowl of Skittles. If you knew one was poisoned, obviously you wouldn't eat the bowl of Skittles. The media went crazy. They went nuts. How dehumanizing to compare illegal immigrants to Skittles. How racist, how xenophobic. They are human beings. They are not candy. We know. Analogies, by their definition, aren't the actual thing. They are the analogy of the thing. But it didn't matter because that worked. That argument worked. Suddenly, you could not talk about illegal immigration because you were considered xenophobic. So you started to see this variable show up in almost every kind of scandal or problem that the Dems were involved with. No oversight, no accountability, because those things were linked to bigotry. So you could, fast forward, you can wave in men to play in women's sports. There's no accountability there because remember, if you called it out, you would be called homophobic or transphobic. if you called out, hey, man, you're granting a lot of asylum here for a lot of people we don't know. Well, that's xenophobic. You invent cashless bail. If we come out against that, you're racist against minority. They create these huge government programs, which we'll talk about in the B block, that doled out billions to Somali refugees. Again, xenophobia. So the missing piece here is accountability, which was controlled or eliminated by the accusation of racism. What happened? We suffer. I think that at this point, you needed somebody like Trump who said, I don't care if you call me a racist. I'm going to come in here and fix this because in the long term, I'll be happy. You can call me a bigot, but I'm going to tackle these challenges. And what happens is the other side who created this risk, whether it was on the border or with crime, inspire mutiny. They inspire mutiny in the street, in government, in the military. So not only do they create the opportunity for hell at the border and with the National Guard. Think about the National Guard. They were in D.C. fixing lack of oversight with crime, and they get shot and killed because of a lack of oversight on immigration. All Trump is trying to do is, I'm trying to fix the oversight, and they go, we have a problem with your process. No, you don't have a say in the process anymore. You're done. So,
great way to end it. All right, coming up next, a $1 billion fraud firestorm erupting on Tim Walz's watch.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.